Hey there. Great. Thank you for hanging in there. We're continuing a conversation in the EKG course and heart block dysrhythmias. We've already covered three different kinds: first degree, second degree, type 1 or Winky block. We covered second degree, Mobitz 2, and we're going to discuss now the last of the heart block dysrhythmias, which, as we said, is a block or non-conduction of impulses arriving coming from the SA node or somewhere above the ventricles. Now, this last one is called a third degree atrioventricular block or third degree AV block. Again, remember that your AV node is the gatekeeper. And so as the name implies, the AV node is blocking more and more impulses. We said in second degree type 1, we said that the PR interval becomes longer and longer, right? The impulses take longer to depolarize the ventricles. And then we saw in second degree type 2 that the AV node becomes very selective and only allows certain impulses to come in and depolarize the ventricles. And we saw the different ratios, 2, 3, or 4 to 1. So now as that second degree Mobitz 2 progresses, it can become a third degree AV block very quickly, which in this case, we would consider an emergency, almost a code blue, because at this point, there's something happening. Now, I have an analogy and you can pick your own, but the atria and the ventricles have to be communicating, and they communicate through the electrical conduction pathway, just like a couple. If you have a couple, a friend, or a significant other, you're always in communication. Whether you like it or not, you're communicating one way or another. Sometimes problems happen, and sometimes problems become bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they are non-repairable. You can't fix your problems, so you become dissociated. You will no longer be speaking. You're not in speaking terms. Well, in this third degree AV block, this is what happens. Your atria and your ventricles will not talk to each other at all. So your SA node is going to send impulses and the ventricles will not want to hear about it. They do not receive any impulses coming from above the ventricles. All right. So your atria will depolarize. You will see P waves. Okay. And then your ventricles will depolarize, but not from the atria. They will be depolarized because there is another, we said there's other pacemaker cells around your heart. I said if your SA node fails, other parts of the atria will take over. Either your AV node will take over, or even your ventricles can also take over. But remember that the lower the impulse originates, the lower the heart rate. So in SA node, we know that the heart rate is 60 to 100. The AV node inherent rate is 40 to 60. And as you go lower into the ventricles, you'll notice that the heart rate is 20 to 40. So it's much lower heart rate. So remember this, because this is going to help you evaluate this arrhythmias and determine where the impulse is coming from. Okay. So again, you're going to see a atrial rate, which may be 60 to 100. It may be a little bit slower. If it's coming from the AV node, you'll notice it is between 40 to 60. So you notice that the impulse is coming from the AV node. But if your ventricular rate is slower, 20 to 40, then it's the impulse is coming from the Purkinje fibers somewhere in the ventricles themselves. If the ventricular rate is between 40 to 60, then the impulse may be generated from the AV node. In this case, the AV node is the one controlling the ventricles now, not the atria, but the AV node. So this is what we mean by dissociative. The impulses from the atria, which is a pre-wave, have nothing to do with your QRS or your ventricular depolarization. So we'll see a little bit of this in just a bit, okay? So what are the criteria for classification for this third degree block, complete block? The P2P interval is going to be regular. The R wave, though, can be regular, but different, okay? They are completely different. P's are one thing, but R's are going to be coming up at different times. So they're going to be a little bit different. The rate, the atrial rate is within the normal limit, 60 to 100. The ventricular rate, though, this is where it's going to differ. If it's slow, between 20 and 40, it means that the pacemaker site is the ventricles themselves. If it's a little bit faster, 40 to 60, then you'll have to conclude that the impulse is coming from the AV node itself, maybe below in the lower part of the AV node, depolarizing the ventricles. So you see a heart rate between 40 to 60. The P wave morphology are going to be normal size, nice and rounded in shape. They may be buried though, along with the QRS. This is the only dysrhythmia where there'll be P waves, but they're kind of hidden within the QRS for some reason. The PR interval is variable due to the atria and ventricular tissue depolarizing at different rates. So you're going to have very different PR intervals with every heartbeat. The QRS duration and morphology is going to differ. Okay, the measurements may be either within normal rates, 0.06 to 0.10, if the impulse is coming from your AV node. But if the impulse is coming from your Purkinje fibers or somewhere in the ventricles, then the QRS, you're going to notice that they're going to become very, very wide. Okay, and they're going to look a little bit bizarre. Okay, so interpreter tip, a third degree heart block or AV block, the P to P and the R to R intervals are regular, they're constant, but the atria and ventricles are firing at different rates. So again, usually you would say a 60 P to 60 atrial rate and a 60 ventricular rate, that would be normal. But in this case, you're going to see maybe an 60 atrial rate, and you may have a 40 ventricular rate. So this is, again, this is dissociative. Atria are doing one thing, ventricles are doing another thing. This is a very different characteristic than the other dysrhythms that we talked about so far. So again, look at the third degree AV blocks and evaluate, use the 5 criteria. Make sure that you can determine which ones, where the AV, where the impulses are coming from, either AV node or the ventricular rate, and also look at the atrial conduction or the atrial rate so that you can count it. How is the patient affected? Well, ultimately, if the ventricles are not contracting within a normal heart rate, which is 60 to 100, you may see the decrease or the signs of decreased cardiac output. The ventricles will be contracting very slow, very slow. And again, this is an emergency. This is a code blue because heart block means that the impulses are not coming down to the ventricles, and eventually this person can go into cardiac arrest. So third degree, you're going to see different P waves, different different P atrial rates, and different ventricular rates. Let's see if we can look at an example here of this kind of heart blocks. Let's see this one. Okay, this is a first degree. Okay, remember we said that the PR interval is constant, 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 right? First degree, there's no other difference. We looked at second degree, type 1. We said there's a progressive PR interval, progressively getting longer, longer, and then you have a missing or non-conducted impulse. We moved on to the second degree, Mobitz 2. We said here that the PR interval is constant, but there's going to be missing impulses. Remember, this is the AV node getting picky and selective, only allowing certain impulses, okay, to be. So we have here, okay, a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 QRSs to 1 P wave. So this is what differentiates this rhythm from the others. And then lastly, we have a third degree or complete heart block. We look here. Now this is going to be normal, P to R. Whenever you see the R here, it's looking a little bit wider, but still normal. Okay. So look at the P's. Here we see a P wave hidden, okay? Right here, a missing QRS, P, QRS missing, T, the PR interval still constant, R, S, T, and then a P, and then a missing QRS, P, variable PRS. See, they're all different. Why? Because the impulses are originating from different areas within the AV junction or the atria. Also important to look is that the QRS here at this time, they may be affected depending where the impulse is coming from. If it's coming from the AV junction, or is it coming from the ventriculars, the ventricles. So at this time, please look at the checkpoint questions LO 8.5 so you can evaluate the rhythms and get familiar with third degree AV block. And this completes our coverage of the heart blocks, dysrhythmias that occur from the AV junction. And then at this time, we're focusing on problems caused by the AV node at the AV junction, not allowing impulses to come in. So there is a chapter summary that you can look into so you can feel confident about evaluating these rhythms. So this concludes, again, the coverage of heart block dysrhythmias. We'll see you on the next chapter. Thank you.